Hey, welcome to Back in the David. I'm your host, David Knight. And yeah, I'm kind of coming to you, well, those who are watching on YouTube, I'm kind of coming to you from the seat, sitting here in my studio, just kind of cooling out. You know, I'm doing it this way because I actually forgot to, on this episode, I forgot to videotape my intro. So I'm doing it now this way, which I think is kind of cool because it's kind of more relaxed, right? And laid back and just, people on audio, I guess you folks don't know because you're not watching, but people on YouTube know I'm just kind of cooling out right here. So if you can, go over to YouTube and you see I'm just kind of sitting here on my phone doing this. I'm enjoying it. But thanks for coming to this episode, checking it out. This is a really cool episode. I don't know what to say about this yet because this is episode 1 of the story of Chace, my band. And I began forming Chace in January of 1981. My big idea was to get into college, not to study a damn thing, but to start a band. Like I've always said, trying to be like Lionel Richie and the Commodores. And this is the first episode of probably a 3-part, 4-part episode about Chace. And this is the first one. I'm calling it Come Together. And I'm calling it that because it's just that. It's just really explaining how I put the band together, you know, the timeline and what took place and the members, everything that happened at that time as I was putting the band together initially back in January, February 81 up until later on, that almost the whole year of 1981, quite frankly, when I think about it, the whole year of 81, just as it went down. But what I really am excited most about doing this little series documentary about the band is that you get to hear our growth. Like this first episode, let me warn you, because this first episode here, you get to hear like really bad singing, like out of key, out of pitch, and really bad playing. But we were 18, 19 years old, you know, just kind of getting into it and we were just jamming. I mean, like Randy was the first member, the drummer, my drummer. He was the first person that I met. And I have cassette tapes that you're going to hear of he and I just jamming in my living room, my family home back in those days, you know. And it just sounds, he and I doing that stuff now. It's like, oh my God, that was us back then. Oh Lord, what? You know, but you hear the progression. So part 1, you hear the story of how we came together. You hear the initial songs that we were doing and trying to put together, how they sounded, how we sounded as a band as a whole. And then part 2, you're going to hear the middle, what I call the middle ages. Like we're growing, we're sounding better, but we're still not quite, and we're just a struggle. So I call that episode, I think, The Struggle, because it was just a struggle. And then episode 3, we're going to get deeper into the growth. And you're going to hear just how we changed and how we went from part 1, episode 1, to how we sounded episode 3. And it'll probably blow your mind. It's just, to me, I listen to this stuff, it's like, wow, look at this. You know, just look at how different we sounded in about a year or 18 months, something like that. It's a really cool story about 5 people that came together, 2 of which ended up getting married and having children, which was me and Tracy. You know, I'm excited about this. And for those of you who have been listening to the podcast for all these 6 seasons now, you know, you've heard me mention Chace, my band, over the last 6 seasons, different episodes. I'd refer to the band and stuff. And I always would say one day I'm going to do a podcast on my band, on Chace. And this is it now. It's not just an episode, it's 3 or 4 episodes. And I'm still recording some of the episodes now, quite frankly. I guess I waited this long because, you know, Chace did not stay together. The band broke up, and I was devastated when that happened. And I really didn't know how to talk about the band for all this time to do an episode because I think I was still angry and still upset and still hurt and still licking wounds behind it, which I'm not anymore. I love the band. I love what we did. I love all the members. They are brothers and sisters to me, but it took me a moment to really understand that I was in pain about that, and I didn't really realize it. But you'll hear that later on, and I'll get into those topics as well. But for now, let's just go on over and let's just begin the story. Part one of Chace, my band, come together. Thanks for listening. Enjoy this. Once again, I want to warn you, some of the singing and some of the recordings, the tape noise, the hissing, the popping, singing off key, timings being off, all the horrible things when you're a young musician just starting out. All right, so you may find yourself turning your volume down in the car or in your headphones, or you may find it turning it up if you can't hear certain things. I tried to balance everything out as best as I could, to level everything out as much as I could. But again, these are old cassette analog recordings. All right. So let me stop yapping, as y'all know I do. Let me cross on over there and let me tell you the story of Chace, my band, my heart, and my soul. All right. Thank you much. Y'all be good. Here we go. 1980 was my senior year in high school. But throughout the 4 years of high school, I had this dream in my head, this vision in my head. You see, once I had heard the story about the Commodores and Lionel Richie and how they met, I wanted to emulate that. Because, as my uncle would call me, he would call me a regular Commodorian. I wanted to be a Commodore so bad, and I knew that was something I could not be. But I wanted to be a Commodore so bad. I wanted to be a Lionel Richie so bad that I emulated them to the 10th degree. And throughout high school, I pretended to be them, and I played music, and I began writing songs and playing my bass and studying and learning and all of this stuff to be like the Commodores, to be like Lionel Richie. But then I heard that they all met in college. They met in Alabama, Tuskegee. And I was like, oh, okay, that gave me an idea. I'll wait. I'll put together my band when I go to college. Now, for those of you who know me, especially those of you who know me from back then, said, David, college? I don't think so. See, I wasn't the best student in school. Matter of fact, I maintained between, I would say, a D minus and an F plus average throughout high school. So me going to college was like, I don't know. But I had this dream in my head still. I'm going to start my band in college. So I don't know how I pulled it off. I had to do an extra, 6 months or so in high school to catch up on credits, which I still to this day never did. So I ended up not going to graduation in June of 1980, but I should have, and all this kind of stuff. And I ended up having to go back to high school in September of 1980, which delayed my vision of starting a band in college and being like Lionel Richie and the Commodores. So go figure, right? Go figure. Well, finally, I struggled for the final few months I had to do of high school, and reluctantly, my parents said, well, what do you want to do? I said, well, I want to go to college. Now, I didn't want to go to college because I wanted to study bass or composition or harmony or orchestration. I wanted to go to college to start a band so I could be like Lionel Richie and the Commodores. You see this? You see the vision? You see where I'm going with all of this? I wasn't about learning music. I felt that I had learned enough music. I could play the bass guitar fairly well. I could write songs fairly well, So if I can just get an opportunity to go to college so I can meet other musicians and begin to cherry pick musicians for my band, that's the reason to go to college. There is no other reason. So my parents, believing my BS, said, okay, fine. Well, where do you want to go? Juilliard was out, and Berkeley. Wasn't even thinking about that. I ain't going away nowhere. I'm nope. So this little college in Long Island popped up on my radar called Five Towns College of Music out in Merrick, Long Island. Some folks say Merrick, Long Island. Well, my family had moved out to Long Island to be with the rest of my family in the summer of 1980. And so that made sense to me. I now live in Long Island. Five Towns College is Long Island. I can go there and I can start my band, and whatever I can learn musically, I can learn, and it'll all be one beautiful thing for me at the end of the day. So I rush and I go to the school and I get the paperwork and I get this. I fill out the applications, and my dad signs this and my dad signs up for that, and my dad puts up the money, my mom puts up money, and blah, blah. And next thing you know, Dave, January 1981, Dave Knight lands in Five Towns College with many of my other friends from my hometown in Queens and new friends I was meeting in Long Island. We all ended up landing at Five Towns College. I guess it was the place to be in 1981. But be that as it may, I'm on a mission now. From day one, I'm on a mission. I'm on a mission to find musicians to start my band. Nothing else mattered to me. I mean, I went to class and I took bass as a major, I took piano as a major, I took songwriting as a major, and I took singing as a major. Come to find out, all that workload, no, with a D minus and a F plus average from high school. What the hell was I thinking? I don't know. But at the end of the day, I went in there and I said, well, let me do some of this music stuff and go to class and all that kind of stuff. So I did it. Fine. It was all good at the end of the day. All right. One of the first places I went, because drum was one of my majors, was my drum class and the drum workshop in the drum room. And I go in there and there are other drummers in there. One of them is one of my good friends, James Jackson, who has now since passed away. He was in there. Another dude was in there. I think his name was Tony. I want to say Tony Drago. I don't know. But I had never seen him before. James Jackson was a nasty drummer. But I had known James since growing up in Queens. So James was not new to me, but nasty drummer, one of my best friends on the planet until the day he passed away. Tony, again, was another awesome drummer at the time and good. But I wasn't looking for virtuoso drummers. I was looking for a drummer who knew how to play, who knew his kit, who knew his set, who could play, hold the groove, and was a good person and build from there. So there was this young man playing drums off to the side, and he was doing his jazz thing with his brushes and stuff like that, and putting it all together and putting it all through. And I just watched him. I just watched him play. And there was something about his energy, something about his personality, something about him that just drew me to him. And the funny part about it is that the whole idea of putting a band together went out of my head. I just wanted to meet him because there was something so cool, so humble, and so beautiful about him that I just wanted to meet him. Now I can articulate all of this now, 2021 to 42 years later. But in 1981, at the age of 18, all I knew, there was something about him that I liked. And so I approached him. His name was Randy. And I said, hey, man, my name is Dave. I play bass. You play drums, blah, blah. Where you from? He's like, oh, I'm from Hempstead. Oh, me too. I'm in Hempstead too. I just moved from Queens out to Hempstead. We started talking, We walked outside. We talked a little bit more. He was getting ready to go home. I think he was going to work at the time because he had a little part-time job. And he was doing that. And we was kind of talking. And I said, well, I'm thinking about putting a band together. Do you want to play drums? I don't know, man. I can hear his voice now. I don't know. He was focused on his mission, whatever that was at that time. Like, all right, no problem. He does his thing, goes his way, I go my way. But I stay on it. I want to be his friend. Not so much to put him in the band as a drummer, not to so much continue my mission of putting a band together, because I just thought he was a really cool guy who played drums. So after a few days, I was like, hey, why don't we get together and just jam at my place? Like, where do you live? Like, I live in Hempstead. I said, I live in Hempstead too. Come to find out, he lived literally down the block from me. I mean, I could walk, and I did this many times, I could walk out my front door with my guitar and with my amplifier and walk to his house in about 5 minutes, give or take. That's how close he lived to me. I mean, really, I could see him from my bedroom window get in his car and drive down to my house on many a day. That's how I knew how to get ready. I don't think he even knew that. I would look out the window, he's in the car, here he comes, and I would start getting my stuff together and run out and, okay, hey, Randy, what's up? And we do our thing. So we began jamming together. And he would pack up his drums. He had a beautiful pearl, I'm going to call it eggplant, like an eggplant purple pearl drum set. And he'd pack up his kick, he'd pack up his snare, and a hi-hat, maybe a couple of toms, foot pedal, pack them in his car, and he would come down, well, I should say come up to my house, because down was going towards his house, but who cares about that, right? And come to my house, unpack his stuff, and we would go into the dining room of my house, because in the dining room is where my dad had put the piano, the family piano, when we moved out to Long Island, right? We'd go in there and we would set up and we would just start jamming. Now, sometimes we would do these jam sessions at his house in his bedroom. But most of the time we came down to my house because we had the piano there. My father was a percussionist and he was very much into salsa at the time. He would be listening to Tito Puente, Mango Santa Maria, all these different salsa artists. But my father had a set of timbales, a pair of bongos, and a set of congas. And I loved playing my dad's congas all the time. And so as a result, my dad and I my dad would get up early in the morning when we lived in Queens playing his stuff. Hey, Dave, come downstairs, play the congas with me. And I do that with him, right? So when Randy came over, it was very normal for me to say, hey, you play your drums, I'm going to pull out my congas and let's just kind of like have at it, right? And so we would do that. And so let me play for you one of the first recordings that Randy and I ever did. This is a recording of us in my family home, in our dining room, Randy playing his drums and me playing congas. And we were young. That's all I can say. We were young. We were just getting started. It was one of the first jam sessions we did, probably somewhere in January, February of 1981. Let's go over that. Check out this. Take a listen to this. Here we go. Alrighty then. See what I mean? It's like what I said about that. That was us jamming on conga and drum back in those days. And we did other jam sessions as well. That was the only one. We did other ones. I have one I'm going to play for you right quick. And again, I'm not going to play these things in their entirety because these were jam sessions. And jam sessions where you can jam out on one, it drives me nuts. You can jam out on one song, literally like one song, I've been in jam sessions where we've jammed on one song for easy 15 minutes to a half an hour, and I get bored after a while. So I'm not going to play the whole thing. I'm just going to play just little clips here and there of the ones that I have from me and Randy, so you can get an idea of what we were doing and how we sounded, what was going on like at that time, 42 years ago, right? So here's another one. This one here I call the wood chopping song, because to me this jam sounds like we're chopping wood. And I used to crack jokes about this at that time, like, yo man, it's like dun, 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 and we're like chopping wood, and I hate it. But here we go. Take a listen to this. The wood chopping song. Was I right? Does that not sound like chopping wood? It's like chopping wood to me. Like, how much wood could a woodchuck chuck? It's like we're chopping wood, right? It just does. But these were the early days. And at that time, what I did not know was that these were the early days of Chace. Because when Randy and I got together, the idea of putting a band together just was like, kind of like went out of my mind, because he and I were just jamming and becoming friends and getting to know each other. Putting a band together just went out the window. I mean, literally went out the window, right? Right about here is where I take a moment to pause from this episode to encourage you to check out my website, davidknightcompose.com. There, you can see more of my history, listen to my music, read articles I've written, check out my hobbies, watch my videos and live streams, and after all of that, you're going to want to take a second and sign up for my email list, because I genuinely want to share everything about me with you. All right? So that's davidknightcompose.com. Okay, let's get back to the show now. Peace. So that gives you an idea of when I first met Randy and when he and I got together and we would jam. Now, there was a period of time from the time we met in January of 1981, for like 6 months, he and I just jammed together like that. And again, I got recordings that I'll stop damaging your ears right about now. But we also began to expand out, just him and I. I got this idea of like, why don't we become like a drummer and bass player kind of duo where we can just like, you know, play with other bands. If a band needs a bass player and a drummer, we come in and we just do our drum and bass thing for other musicians that need a bass player and a drummer. He's like, oh, that's not a bad idea. Well, one of our friends in college, a gentleman by the name of Greg Lawrence, and he's on my Facebook page, so if he happens to see this, he might even remember this. I don't know, but we'll see. Greg said, hey, Greg was in Queens. He was from Queens just like me, so he knew a lot of the people, a lot of musicians from Queens and Long Island. He's one of the cats that was out there that just knew everybody and was just so well connected within the community of musicians and beyond, right? So Greg said, hey man, I have a friend of mine, she has a band, and she needs a drummer and a bass player. You guys want to do it? And I think Greg told this to Randy, and Randy may have told me. I don't remember how this actually went down. But either way, we ended up playing with this woman and her band. Her name was Sandra. And she had like this rhythm and blues jazz band. And so she would do a lot of the standards, you know, Misty, Ain't Misbehavin', you know, a lot of the old jazz R&B standards like that. Good Morning Heartache, all of these different songs that we all grew up on. And so Randy and I began playing with her and her band, just me on bass and Randy on drums. And we would get in the car on a Friday night and a Saturday night, and we'd pack up our gear, meet with her, do some rehearsals or whatever, and then go out and do bands. And we did this for like 6 months. 6 months. And it was great because we got paid, I think it was like $75 per gig, something like that, which, back then for us at 18, he and I were just shy of turning 19. We turned 19 several months later, but we're still 18. So 18-year-olds, man, especially me, because I wasn't working. I think Randy had a part-time job doing something. I don't remember, but I know I wasn't working. My dad was on my ass 24/7. Dave, get a part-time job. Dave, get a job. But I wasn't trying to hit it. I was trying to make money with my music, and these gigs kind of did that, right? So playing with her and her band, it gave Randy and I the chance, the opportunity to play together and to lock and to become better at playing bass and playing drums, but in a band situation. And to me, that was really good. But then something happened. People don't always pay you. And so we did, I think, 1 or 2 gigs, and we had to begin to hunt her down for our money, which I don't like doing at all. And we go to her house and ring the doorbell. Hey, it's Randy. We're going to give us the money. We're going to get paid, blah, blah, blah. There were times that she'd peek out the window and see what's up and wouldn't answer. It became really... so after a while, we just said forget about it. So at that point, soon after that, I called a friend of mine, Gary Marshall. Gary and I are in touch to this day still. And Gary played saxophone. He and I went to high school together at Cardoza back in Queens. And we used to jam and play when I lived in Queens before moving out to Long Island. So I called Gary and said, hey, Gary, man, why don't you come out? Me and my boy Randy here, who I met here in Long Island, we jam at my house, man. On Friday nights and Saturdays, we jam at my house and just bass and drum. But why don't you come bring your saxophone out, and let's just jam, saxophone and bass and drums. Now, again, I had been playing piano, but I wasn't a pianist or piano player. I wanted to write songs like Lionel Richie. That's the only reason why I sat my ass behind a piano at the end of the day, even though that was the second instrument I began tinkering with when I was 8-9 years old. So we go, okay. So Gary comes out, and me, Randy, and Gary, we're now jamming. Saxophone, bass, and then I would move from bass to piano. But that would frustrate me because now in my head, I'm hearing songs. Now in my head, Randy's on drums, I'm playing bass, Gary's on sax, I need a piano player. Or if I'm playing piano, I'm saying to myself, now, Randy's on drums, Gary's playing sax, I'm on piano, there's no bottom, there's no bass, nobody playing bass there. So now, once again, the charge inside of me to put a band together was back on. That fire clicked to be like the Commodores and Lionel Richie and put a band together. That spark that I had forgotten about when I met Randy Gregory came back because now Randy and I had been playing with Sandra. We were playing tighter as a bass player and drummer. Gary was there on his saxophone. Other important instruments were missing in these jam sessions, but yet I'm hearing them in my head, and so I'm getting frustrated. So I wanted to put a band together. So one night, after one of our mini rehearsals, one of our mini jam sessions, I pulled Gary aside before he left to go home that night, and I said, hey, Gary, you know what would be kind of really cool? He said, what? I said, if we could find a girl who plays trumpet, who can sing, and who can maybe even dance some, that would be really kind of cool. Because now I'm thinking Sly and the Family Stone. I'm thinking Cynthia Robinson, the trumpet player for Sly and the Family Stone. And if we can see where my head is at? Like I'm going from the Commodores, I'm all over the freaking place, But I guess that's how you do things. I guess that's how you create. That's how you see a vision. And you want this and you want that. You begin to put these things together. Now, I don't know at this juncture, I really don't know what wheels I'm really putting into motion here. I really don't understand what I'm doing. All I know is that I'm doing this. My heart, my soul, everything is telling me to do this. So Gary says, all right. Hey, he's like, that's one of his things. That's a pretty tall order, Dave. I'm like, hey, you never know. You might come across something. Who the heck knows, right? But I wanted that really bad. Well, the funny part is that was on a Friday night. He called me that next Saturday saying, hey, yo, Dave, you're not going to believe this. I said, yo, what's up, Gary? He goes, you're not going to believe this, but I met this girl at a party last night. He said, at Paco's house. I believe it was Paco's house. And Gary, if you listen to the episode, keep me honest, man. Let me know. I believe it was at Paco's house, and I knew who Paco was. He was one of my friends from Queens, from my Queens days. So I knew he was. But I met this girl at a party at Paco's house. And I'm like, well, why wasn't I invited to Paco's party? I don't know. And she plays trumpet. She sings. And she also dances. I was like, get out of here, man. He's like, no. Yo, Knight, I'm serious. For real. I'm like, get out of here. He's like, no. I said, what's her name? Her name is Tracy. I said, okay. Tracy what? He said, I think it's Tracy Farley or Tracy Ferry. I don't remember. But it's one of those, but I wrote it down, and I have the number here. You want it? I'm like, yeah. Give me the number. I said, okay. So I took the number down. I wrote it down. Tracy Ferry. I didn't know. I wrote on a piece of paper, one of my dad's notes in his office. And I wrote the number down. I still have that piece of paper today. And if I can find it, I'm going to flash it up on the screen. Because it should be with all of my stuff, all of my other stuff. I still have her number. I call her. Her mom answers. Now, thinking about that for a minute, that's kind of interesting. Because her mom answers, and on this is how life blows your mind, right? And we all know that because we've all had these experiences. But her mom answers, and I didn't know back in July of 1981 that the woman who answered that phone was going to end up being my mother-in-law and the grandmother to my children. Like, whoa. Okay, so I say, hi, my name is David Knight. Is Tracy home? Yeah, hold on a minute. So she puts Tracy on the phone. Hello? Hey, Tracy, my name is David. Did Gary tell you about the band? I'm trying to put together this band and blah, blah. She goes, oh, yeah. Like, we talked a few minutes about it. I said, well, come to one of our next practices we're going to be doing on Tuesday. This was July 7th, 1981. I said, can you make it? She goes, yeah. I said, well, let me tell you the bus, how to get out here by the bus. I'm in Long Island. No, don't worry. I'll borrow my mom's car and I'll drive out. I was like, oh, shit, she has a license. She drives. Cool. I didn't have that. I was just, by July 1981, I was taking driving lessons. She had a license. I was like, okay. So she drove out. And she rang my doorbell July 7th, 1981, between 3:30 and 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Opened the door, and I said, hey, my name is David. Hi, I'm Tracy. I'm like, come on in. She comes in. She has a trumpet with her. Randy's there. Gary's there. And we start jamming. I had just written this song, and many of you know by now, I've just written this song called Fantasy World. It was an R&B pop song, duet, male-female duet. Wrote on piano. And so I said, hey guys, I have this song that I wrote called Fantasy World. Why don't we learn it? Why don't we try it, see what we get? Okay, everybody was game. So I showed the lyrics to Tracy, and I play the melody and stuff on the piano, and we start jamming on it, right? And as we begin to jam on it, I do what I've been doing from day one, which is recording everything that I ever done, everything that I ever did with my music. I hit play and record on the tape recorder, and I began recording Fantasy World. And take a listen to what's left of it. Some of it was erased. I'll just play some of the ending parts of it. Again, this could be painful to the ears, so I ain't going to keep playing it but so long. So here we go. Fantasy World. Take a listen to it. All right, there you have it. That's Fantasy World. That and I don't know who knows who doesn't know, but later on, I re-recorded that song and I released it. I think it was in 2021. A whole new version of Fantasy World, like a jazz version. I'm gonna play that for you right now too. So take a listen to Fantasy World, the new jazz version of it as well. Here we go. Hey everybody. When I recorded that section of this episode and I listened to Fantasy World and then I listened to the new version of Fantasy World, I was pretty amazed. I underestimated that song. And I know I said, I really didn't like that song a heck of a whole lot back in those days, and that was the truth. But I was young. I was 18 going on 19 when I wrote Fantasy World. It wasn't until I pulled Fantasy World out of my ice chest in 2021 and re-recorded it and did it over again in the jazz feel and stuff like that I really understood the meaning of Fantasy World and the value of that song. Fantasy World was really the first song that I wrote. It was really the first song that I finished and completed and brought to other musicians and other people to play. It is the foundation of my songwriting. It really is. And so what I'm doing in this episode, if you go to the show notes page, or if you're watching on YouTube and you go into the links below, I've put a link in there for you to click on to go to the Fantasy World page on the website. And you can go there and download the song, Fantasy World. You can purchase the CD if you like. It's a really good song, and I just really didn't realize that. And so many of you fans have said to me, that's a really good song, man, and that's a really good jazz version. Because I'm always beating myself up because I'm not a jazz musician, but I think I realize now it's really good. And so I'm making this song available to those who like it, to those who want it, at the website, davidknightcompose.com/fantasyworld. I'm sorry, davidknightcompose.com fantasy-world. I get that right. Just click on the link. All right. Let's get back to the episode. You guys be good. All right. So that's Fantasy World. That was the jazz, which I'm not a jazz musician, but that was the jazz version of it. I never liked that song. And that was one of the things from back at that time that just would fuel me, because I was writing these songs and trying to write songs, and I just didn't like what I was writing. So Fantasy World sat in my milk crate. For my milk crate, I will get you my milk crate for those who haven't seen. Hang on a minute. This is my milk crate. Every song that I have ever written or recorded from 40 plus years ago is in here. And I actually took this. That's where Fantasy World ended up, in there, right? But years later, looking for background music for this podcast show, I pulled it out and I said, I don't like this song, but it might be a good song for background music. So I did it, and that's how I came with that version. I played it for my wife and other people. They said, you should do this as a regular song, and so I did. And it's at the website now, Fantasy World. But getting back to the story, we kept going. Me, Randy, Gary, and Tracy, we kept going throughout the rest of the summer, July and August, until school came back in September of that year of 1981. Now, Randy and I, we're back in school, we're back in college. Tracy's in high school at the time. She was now moving into her final year of high school. When I met her, she was a junior in high school, and September of 1981, she became a senior, and she started her senior year in high school, and I was starting my sophomore year at Five Towns, and so we're all back in school, but now I'm feverishly back on my mission to put a band together. I'm really like, I'm gonna put a band together. So I'm still looking for young musicians now. So before I can go any further in the story, and before I can bring the next member into the band, I have to go back. I got to go back to like 1978, 1979. And this memory's kind of foggy in my head, but I remember being at my grandmother's house and talking about my music, and my grandmother said, "Oh, you should talk to your cousin. You know, he plays guitar and blah blah blah." I was like, "Really? I didn't know that." So then my aunt comes in, "Yeah, talk to Gregory and Randy and Cyrano and my cousins and blah blah blah." I was like, "Really? I didn't know this." I mean, 1978, I was 16. I didn't know. So I'm like, so now I'm thinking, well, what does he play? Like, he plays guitar. So I have a cousin that plays guitar? Yeah. Oh. Okay, so now I switched from the Commodores to the Brothers Johnson. So that's how stupid I am. So I switched now. Now I'm thinking in my head, okay, I can put my band together, and it won't quite be like the Commodores. It'll be like the Brothers Johnson. It'll be me playing bass and my cousin, this dude who I'd never met before, playing guitar, and we're going to be funky. It's going to be nice. And I had never heard him play a day in my life. I had no idea if he was good, intermediate, or was slamming. No clue. All I knew was that my grandmother and my aunt said I have a cousin that played guitar, and he lived in Queens, not far from us. And I was like, wow, that blew me away, quite frankly. It tells you how secretive families can be for whatever the freaking reasons are. To this day, I still don't even know, but whatever, right? So I said, okay, cool piece. So fast forward back to 1981 now. We're back in school. Me, Randy Gregory, Tracy's back in high school. And I had signed up for a music business class because as much as I love music, I also love the music business, the business of music, right? It's not enough just to write songs and play an instrument. You know, there's a business wrapped around all that as well. And I love that just as much as playing instruments. So I took this music business class, and the professor in the class, his name was Harvey Racklin. And we're in the class, and Mr. Racklin is going through taking attendance. And he goes, so-and-so here, so-and-so and so-and-so here, Johnny here, Sally here, Jimmy Bob, I'm here. All right, cool. David Knight, I'm here. Randy Batiste, here. And I was like, huh? Randy Batiste. Okay. Sitting behind me. I'm like, is that Corvette outside yours? And I had heard that my cousin had a Corvette. It's like, yeah. He's like, yeah, it is. So you got a brother named Greg? He goes, yeah. I was like, I think we're cousins, man. So like, why don't we talk after class? Because I'm putting a band together, and I like to play guitar in the band. And he laughed and he smiled at me. He goes, let's talk outside after the class, because he was really, you know, on his game, very professional, very, this is it, let's make this thing work, you know, and that's how he was with himself. And I was like, okay. Me, on the other hand, I'm Mr. Not knowing it back in those days, I'm Mr. Anxiety and Mr. Let's do this, let's go, 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 go. You know, that's me. He's like, nah, let's talk after class. I said, okay, cool. So class ended, we talked, and I said, well, I'm putting a band together. Why don't you come down and jam? I have a drummer, and I have a singer who plays trumpet, and I play bass, and we're jamming at my dad's house. Why don't you come in and see if you like it? And if you like it, man, be down with us, basically. And he said, yeah, okay. And I was shocked because I didn't think he was going to say that. I was truly, and I think to this day he doesn't know that. I was truly, truly surprised because in my mind, if what I understood about him from the family grapevine, he was definitely more advanced than what I was at that time, not only in playing his instrument, but also in being in bands and, you know, music business and stuff like that. He was just more advanced than me. So I was like, yo, word? He's like, yeah. I was like, okay, cool. So he put the guitar down, and here we are now, me, Randy Gregory on drums, Randy Batiste, my cousin, on guitar, Tracy doing trumpet and some vocal stuff, and then Gary Marshall doing his saxophone. So we jammed, and we kind of did a few jam sessions there. But then Randy, my cousin Randy, he said, you know, we really shouldn't be jamming in a living room, dining room here. Why don't we like find a studio and just jam there. We can just kind of jam and play out and see where this is all going. I'm like, oh, I had never thought of that. I mean, I just never thought of that. And I had been in rehearsal studios in the whole 9 yards, in my previous years back in the day, jamming, rehearsals, sessions, recordings, the whole thing. But for some reason, that never crossed my mind because I'm like, well, I'm here in my house and I'm comfortable and we don't have to pay nobody. It's all good. But I said, you know what? Good point, man. Let's do that. We began to do that. So around the same time that he said, why don't we do a rehearsal studio, I came up with this bass line. Check it out. Okay, I came with that bass line. And in my mind, that bass line was the bomb because that bass line was just funky. It was rhythmic. It moved, it grooved, and everything. So I wrote a song around that bass line. It's called Having Fun. And when we transitioned out of my dad's family's living room, dining room, to the rehearsal studio, which was above the rehearsal studio. Here's the funny part. The rehearsal studio we went to, it was called Merlin Studios, right, in Long Island. It was a rock metal guitar rehearsal studio above a garage repair shop, right? And so you would hear like welding and stuff in the garage and the metal and stuff like that going on. But we were above that. And so when we first transitioned out of the family dining room into Merlin Studio, it must have been, I guess, around October of 1981, somewhere in that ballpark. I figured I had that bass line, and I had wrote this song up against that bass line. The song was called Having Fun. And we began learning that song and rehearsing that song. So I have a few clips here, a few music clips here from that song. I'm going to play first the music clip from that song from when I first actually sat on the edge of my bed and came up with the song, came up with that bass riff. I actually had a recording. Like I said, I recorded everything back in those days. So I actually have the first recording of me sitting on the edge of my bed in my bedroom, and that bass line came out. Okay? So here's that recording.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4.
All right. That's the first recording of that bass line ever. Me sitting on the edge of my bed playing that bass line. Okay? Now, let's transition over to when we began rehearsing it and how it sounded, the first recording that we did of that song and how it sounded. Again, for this, I'm probably not going to play the whole thing, just a snippet again, because these things, man, these original recordings were like murder on the ears. But when I played these recordings back in 1981, to me it was like, oh, it was great because that's one of my songs. That's my bass line, my song, and it sounds, oh my God. And I have now a rhythm section playing it, right? It wasn't a full rhythm section. Well, let me rewind a little before I even play this. Rewind. We were still short a keyboard player. Like I said, it was me on bass, Randy Gregory on drums, Tracy doing trumpet vocals, Randy Batiste, my cousin, on guitar. we were still shy, and Gary Marshall on saxophone, we were still shy of a keyboard player, a piano player. So what, again, my brainiac sound, my brainiac brain, I go back to school, and now I'm looking for keyboard player. And I come across this girl, her name is Liz, I believe it was Liz Bressack. They're going to come for using their full name. I hope not. I'm just trying to tell an honest story of the people and the things and the events that happened in this story. That's it. But Liz was a keyboard player. She played piano. And she came to, and when I met her, I said, hey, I'm putting a band together. We need a keyboard player. Are you interested? She said, well, I don't know if I'm going to do that, but I'd come and I'll play with you guys for a minute and, we'll see what happens. Okay, cool. Because in my mind now I'm thinking, hey, if she comes, we're so awesome. My nameless band is so awesome that she's going to come down to one of our rehearsals. Now, these aren't jam sessions no more. These are rehearsals because I have this song called Having Fun with this funky bass line that we've been learning. And we need a piano player to fill this song out, right? So, here we go. My mind, I'm thinking she's going to come down. She's going to love this band, and she's going to be the keyboard player in the band once she hears how great we are. So she comes down, and we begin to teach her the chords to play for Having Fun. The song was in E minor, I believe. And so we began teaching her the song on piano. She learned it, and this is one of the first recordings, this is the first recording of that rehearsal that night. Let's go to the tape. Here we go. All right, let me stop it there. Let me stop it there because that's rough on the ears, right? Keep it in mind, this is all, from a cassette player, from boombox back in those days. So, recording ain't going to be the best. And that's how it was just done. I mean, today's quality of technology is a whole different ballgame compared to what it was like back in 1981. But still, that was Having Fun. Now, we worked on the song some more, and we refined the song some more. We massaged the song some more. Randy came up with this guitar part, this guitar break, for him to do, and he taught it to Liz, and the both of them began playing this riff, her on piano, him on guitar, as a break in the middle of the song, which was really like right after my bass solo, which was really kind of cool. So I'm gonna play that, and this was the last time that we did this song, okay? Because the song just never really worked, as far as I'm concerned, as far as we were all concerned, it's never really worked. But this was the last time we played it, and this was, I think, the best recording that we ever did of this song. And even that, I'm gonna probably play most of this because it's a better recording, and you can hear the arrangement that Randy and Liz worked out on guitar and piano and all that kind of stuff, and it's a little better. So I think it's a little more tolerable, I'll say. All right, so take a listen to this. This is Having Fun. This was now, I believe, October, maybe early November of 1981. Okay, so here we go. Having Fun one more again. All right. So, you hear that? So that's Having Fun. Now, it's kind of weird for me. I mean, that was like the best recording of the song overall. But it still made me and even Randy and all of us kind of like cringe, like, it's just not there, just not there. And so we abandoned the song, right? Like we just didn't deal with it anymore. And that was kind of bittersweet for me because I knew the song wasn't all that great, but I still knew the song could be better. And I still feel that way to this day. I'm going to play something for you because I began to use the bass riff just a few months ago for the opening for the podcast because I still love that bass line. I don't know why. There's still something about that bass line that to me is just danceable. It's just funky. So I did like a recording of it, a little loop that I was going to use for the introduction for the podcast here. But I abandoned that because I was like, so every time I try to use that bass line, as funky as it is, when you're playing it by itself, it sounds funky. It's like, yeah, yeah. But when you start putting instrumentation behind it, it just doesn't work. So check out this little loop that I did. This must have been, this is what now? This must have been 3 or 4 months ago. I attempted once again to pull Having Fun out the bass line to Having Fun, put new stuff around it, and use it for the intro back in the day. So take a listen. Here we go. Here we go. Let me show you. Here we go. All right. See what I mean? So I guess some of y'all might say that sounds pretty good. Like, yeah, that's good. But to me, it still lacks something. It's still not there. And we're now talking 42 years later. I'm still attempting to use that bass line, that riff. And every time I start, I still go, it's just not there. All right. But let me move on with the story. So Liz did not work out as the keyboard player in the band. She didn't want to do it. She didn't want to commit to a band at that time. It was like, okay, cool. And we were looking for something a little bit more different at the same time. And we just kind of part ways, and we kept in touch. She kept in touch while we were in school and everything, and that was fine. We kept in touch in school and everything, and that was fine. So now I'm still on my mission. I need like one more person to fill out this band. I need one more member, keyboard player. And it was difficult because back in those days, there wasn't a lot of keyboard players around because everybody played usually drums, guitar, or bass. That was it. Nobody really got into playing piano because, let's face it, piano is not the easiest damn instrument on the planet to play. It just really isn't. You know, you got to deal with chords and scales and harmonies and how does this fit, how's that. It takes a certain kind of brain, as far as I'm concerned, to really play a piano really well. And so there just wasn't an abundance of piano player, keyboard players at that time. But I'm in school one day, back at Five Towns College of Music in Merrick, Long Island, and Mr. Racklin, the music business teacher, I'm walking in the hallway, and he says, "Hey Dave, come here. I have someone I want you to meet." I said, "All right, you want me to meet?" He goes, "Yeah. I met this young lady. I want you to meet her because I think she's really good." And I had told Mr. Racklin I was putting the band together. Everybody hated me because I just talked about this band I was putting together. And so everybody and their mama knew because I have the gift of gab. You can't shut me up, and that hasn't changed in 60 years. So whatever, who cares, right? He said, "But I want you to meet her." I said, "Okay, cool." So I go into the room, and this young lady sitting behind the piano playing. I said, "Hey, how you doing?" She goes, "Fine. How you doing?" I said, "My name is David Knight." She goes, "My name is Vicky." I said, "Hey, Vicky, you play piano?" "Yeah, I play a little bit." I'm like, "Okay." She's a little short, 2-bit little thing, right? I'm like, "Okay, cool peas, no problem." So she's playing. I'm like, yo, she can play. I'm like, damn, she can play. I said, "Okay. All right, cool." So then I said, "Well, scoot over for a minute." So she scooted over for a little minute. I said, "Can you sing?" She goes, "Yeah." I said, "Okay, well, let's do a little something." So of course, I sit behind the piano and I start playing, what else? Endless Love, Lionel Richie. So I'm playing Endless Love. I said, "Do you know it?" She goes, "Yeah, I kind of know it, you know." I said, "You know lyrics?" "I kind of know the lyrics." I said, "Okay, well, let's just try it." So I begin playing Endless Love, right? And as I'm playing Endless Love, we start singing, "My love, there's only you," the whole thing. And she starts, I'm like, wow, she can sing. Okay, cool. So I started my sales pitch right away. I'm putting the band together. We need a keyboard player. We're going to be rehearsing tonight or tomorrow night, whenever it was. You want to come down and take a listen and sit in and maybe play a little bit with us to see how it all works out and blah, blah, blah. She's like, I got caught off guard. She stood back. She's like, "Yeah, okay. I said, "Okay, well, let me talk to other members and I'll get the information." We changed numbers out and everything. And I had to go to another class, so I get ready to walk out the door. And as I walk out the door, my cousin Randy, he pulled up and said, "Yo, man, this girl in here, Vicky, she can play piano really good and she can sing really good." And I asked him to come down to our next rehearsal. He goes, really? I said, yeah, man. I said, she's really good, and I think with what we're trying to do as a band, this can work. He goes, all right, let's see what happens. So she came down when it's rehearsals. And this is where I am going to end this episode, because now this is where Chace takes flight. This is where it goes, right? This is where the band is there. Now it's me on bass, Randy Gregory on drums, Randy Batiste on guitar, Vicky on keyboards, and Tracy on vocals and trumpet. The whole dynamic now changes. Everything changes from this point forward. And we're going to get deeper into that, and also the struggle, the deep, painful struggle to find songs that gives Chace its sound. That struggle is painful, but that's going to be the next episode. So until then, as my grandmother would say, keep on living, night out. If you enjoyed this episode, take a moment and leave a 5-star comment. I'd really appreciate it, and it seriously helps others find the show. Thank you for listening. I know you have a ton of other things on your plate that you could be doing and maybe you should be doing, but you took a moment to hang out with me, and I'm so, so grateful. So until next time, as my grandmother would say, keep on living, night out.